All right, good morning. And of course, you keep practicing. If you are practicing, keep on practicing. It's quite all right. Um, so, as quick announcement, I do have the studio set to be open next Sunday. Just have to get a few things kind of in order. So, but hopefully you'll be able to sign up. Basically, are able to sign up at this point, but I'll give everybody the heads up about that. Today, of course, we're discussing chapter 12 of the Gita. We kind of started it last week, but I'll kind of refresh where we left off and where we're headed. Okay, so this chapter is, it's titled, if you will, in Eknav Aswaran's translation, The Way of Love. And it begins with a question from Arjuna. And it says, of those steadfast devotees who love you and those who seek you as the eternal formless reality, who are the more established in yoga? Essentially, he's like asking, what's the best way? Good morning, Eureka. Essentially, yes, he's asking what's the best way, and of course, Krishna will give us that answer in the following passages. But I do love this idea of what Krishna is supposed to be. And I'll say it over and over again, and that is that, we try to put words to something that it can't be defined, where words simply cannot be used to describe what it is that we're trying to achieve or, become aware of. But I do like these words. Who love you and those who seek you as the eternal formless reality. The eternal formless reality. So, in the last chapter, Krishna did a great job, of course, at explaining this, this mystical experience that he was was presenting himself as. Arjuna, on one hand, had his ups and downs with that experience. And in the end, Arjuna, or at least in the beginning of this chapter, the end of that experience, he kind of describes it as this eternal, formless reality, which I think is, again, it's like a really good way to describe something that really is very, very difficult to describe. But of course, the question is, who are the more established in yoga? So who is it that's more established in yoga? And then Krishna goes on to answer. In the second passage, those who set their hearts on me and worship me with unfailing devotion and faith are more established in yoga. So he goes on, he says, all right, Bhakti may be studying, whether it's the Gita or the Tao or whatever it might be, where I'm simply reading and not fully aware of what's going on. Or if I'm doing that food prayer and I'm just rushing to eat, the prayer itself is not really heartfelt, and you have to kind of pull yourself back from that place. And so, it's weird. Okay, well, of course, he prays a number of times a day of the day. The Islamic faith, there's a lot of kind of austerities in their calendar, right, that they perform, right, with Ramadan's fast approaching. So, when it doesn't matter, it almost doesn't matter, right? The length of time doesn't matter as much as the quality, right? Quality and quantity. We come back to that. And the same thing could be said, of course, for our yoga practice. Right? In the Ashtanga practice, quantity certainly shows up in the amount of postures that we perform, right? That we're practicing. But at no point is it at no point does quality, right? We don't diminish quality in lieu of quantity, right? We don't, if you can't have both, right, then you've got to side towards quality. We simply can't just race on through, get through our postures. Right? It's got to be done in a very meaningful, heartfelt way. So, again, repeating the second passage. Those who set their hearts on me and worship me with unfailing devotion and faith are more established in yoga. Please consider that most important concept of sankalpa. All right. If I might just continue to blather on about this. I think I may have mentioned in the past week or so, I'm rereading a great book called Stumbling on Happiness by Daniel Gilbert. It's really fun. He's got a TED Talk and all that stuff about the book and his studies on happiness. And, these first parts of the book are so much about, defining happiness. And what's important to us right now is the difference between experience and awareness. And so something he brings up in his book is we could be experiencing a thing and yet not fully aware of what's happening. And he brings up this, unfortunately, something that happens to me all too often. Thankfully, it did not happen to me while I was reading the book. But maybe you yourself have read a book in the past and something pops into your mind, or you hear something off into the distance, and you're reading through, but you're not consuming the language. You're not consuming the story whatsoever. So you get a few paragraphs down and you're like, gosh, what did I just read? Have you guys ever done that? Have you guys ever experienced that before? Right? Yeah. Right? And you're like, oh, sure, I gotta go back and read it. So we're experiencing, reading, the act of reading is taking place. But our awareness is not present, right? Our most able function of consciousness is not part of that experience. So we do the same thing with practice, right? I like to think that I'm at that place where more often than not, right? And maybe if I were to put a percentage on it now, maybe I would be in between the 80 and 90% range where I'm practicing and I'm fully aware of the practice, right? And fully aware of my breath, right? But there's still that 10 to 20% that, my mind is thinking about dishes and my next meal and what I've got to do for the day and who I didn't text and so on and so forth. And I'm still doing, Bekasana, right? But I'm thinking about Nick and how I have not contacted him for work, right? So we always have, though we're experiencing the pose, our awareness isn't necessarily a part of it. How important, as Krishna says, those who set their hearts on me, using Krishna, and worship me with unfailing devotion. Who set their hearts is this expression of full awareness in the experience, the activity that we're participating in. Man, it's so important. It's so important. I can't believe it's one of those things where you're just oh man, that is the switch that makes yoga and asana calisthenics, right? Just exercise. Otherwise, that's all it is. All right. So, moving on, the third passage. As for those who seek the transcendental reality without name, without form, contemplating the unmanifested, beyond the reach of thought and feeling. All right, so now here Krishna attempting to define that state of being that is beyond, this kind of lower reality. Again, for those who seek the transcendental reality without name, without form, contemplating the unmanifested, beyond the reach of thought and of feeling. Right? Beyond the reach of thought. Remember, Mandukya Upanishad, 4 stages. First stage, waking. Second, dreaming. Third, sleeping. The fourth, Turiya, beyond the mental state, right? Beyond just like Patanjali 1.2, right? Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, the cessation of thought. It's the state we're trying to achieve. So beyond the reach of thought and of feeling. And then it gives us like a bunch of rules that we have to follow, practices essentially, with their senses subdued, right? We've heard this refrain how many times throughout the Gita? I'm going to put it somewhere between like 30 and 40 already. Right? And why? Like, why so many times? I've talked about that in the past as well. Because we wanted to kind of drill it into our head that these are the most basic of practices that we need to perform to kind of up level. So senses subdued, the mind serene and striving for the good of all beings. Right? Like kindness, so we practice the yamas, right? We practice those yamas, the good of all beings. Right? Of course, non-harming, truthfulness, non-stealing, respect or moderation, and of course, being without envy or non-grasping. All right? So senses subdued, the mind serene, calm, clear, and then practicing kindness, goodness through the yamas. They too will verily come unto me. All right? So we have devotion. And then essentially what's being described here are, kind of karma yoga, right? So subduing the senses, practicing your yamas, right? Making the mind clear, right? Active, right? We're doing it. The fifth passage, yet hazardous and slow is the path to the unrevealed, difficult for physical creatures to tread. Right? Difficult for physical creatures to tread. And of course, I always interpret this as we've got to think about the rules of nature that are imposed upon us because we are of nature, right? We are of this physical form because we are conditioned by our environment, right? And by environment, I don't just mean, the spaces around us, but the people we interact with, the laws that are imposed upon us, right? The type of society, right? This kind of fledgling democracy. Should not laugh about that. Should not laugh about that. Right? They are shaping who we are, right? And how we have to navigate our world. So, difficult for those physical creatures to tread. Why is it difficult? Because these physical creatures whose condition has been shaped by this environment, now those rules that have been imposed upon us by this environment have to be shed completely for us to reach that transcendent state. So our current condition, right? If we read through, portions of the first chapter, a good chunk of the second chapter of the Yoga Sutra, we know the importance of conditioning, the role it plays as the primary obstacle for us to achieve that state of being, right? The transcendent state. But they, so the sixth passage, but they for whom I am the supreme goal, who do all work renouncing self for me and meditate on me with single-hearted devotion, these I will swiftly rescue from the fragments cycle of birth and death, for their consciousness has entered into me. And then this is a great passage because, like bhakti, essentially is a complicated path, no doubt. And it's both simple and difficult, as I've mentioned in the past. Simple because the only thing that you need to do is put your heart, right? Put your intentions in just one basket. That's it, right? Whether it's Krishna or Christ or Buddha or whatever, right? That's all you got to do. But it's complicated because, right, our physical realities kind of get in the way. Religiosity skews this enormously as well. I know this is my own personal thoughts, and I don't want to offend anybody, that's for sure, because I do believe religion plays a wonderful role in just humanity in general. But it is an instruction manual for something that is too complex to have an instruction manual for, right? A good portion of religion is like the first parts of the Vedas, rituals and ceremonies and basic practices that we go through, right? The rituals that we kind of move through. But that's like the lower reality stuff, right? And that's what's so often how people can get so kind of tied into that lower aspect of the practice, right? Of these rituals, right? I go through this step, this step, this step, and I don't have to think about anything else. I don't have to improve. I can resolve all or absolve all of my sins by, no matter what they are, by going to church. That's an extreme, of course, right? So you actually got to put the work in, right? And the work is well beyond the methodology of religions. All right. Let me finish with the 8th. We'll see what we get through here. Still your mind in me, still your intellect in me, and without doubt you will be united with me forever. The 9th passage. If you cannot still your mind in me, learn to do so through the regular practice of meditation. If you lack the will for such self-discipline, engage yourself in my work for selfless service. Can lead you at last to complete fulfillment. If you're unable to do even this, surrender yourself to me, disciplining yourself and renouncing the results of all your actions. All right. So he's gone through. He's like, hey, remember karma yoga, raja yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, right? He's gone through all of them. He's just like, oh, okay, so we're focusing on bhakti, right? The path of devotion, the path of, love and surrender. But by the way, right, karma yoga, right, of action of selfless service, as he brings up. Raja yoga, right, self-discipline, disciplining, right, controlling the senses or subduing the senses, as he had just mentioned. At least that's one part of that self-discipline. The contemplation of him, right, the jnana yoga, right, the path of knowledge, of contemplation as well. So it goes through all 4 yogas here. It's kind of nice that the package, right, of the everything's been packaged so well in chapter 12. Even though, again, the shift largely has been towards bhakti yoga, he's reminding us that not everybody is fit for that path. And that all we need to do is go back through chapters 3 through 7, right? 3 through 8, roughly, and study those, and we'll be good. Now, is one better than the other? Can we evolve from one to another, or should we utilize all of them, right? And it's a little bit like finding the right style of yoga practice for you, yeah, right? So, some of you out there, right, and on YouTube might be into like yin or the restorative, and of course, in Mysore, we're doing Ashtanga, a very different type of practice, and that's fine, right? We find that which kind of fits us best, suits us best, right? That we can most easily understand, where the obstacles are, kind of limited because of our understanding of it, how we fit into it. Right? And the 4 yogas work the same way. For myself, right? Raja yoga, self-discipline, comes relatively easy. For others, karma yoga, selfless service, right? My friend Jay, he is feeding the homeless. He lives in out in like LA, Burbank area. And, him and his family are going to the past few weeks, taking donations, buying food, toiletries, and so on, and going out to the 10 cities and giving out food and toiletries and what have you. So, and doing so with conversation, I should add. That's the kind of work that, the karma yogi might do, right? That of contemplation, and jnana yogi, so important as well, right? That we kind of take those steps to kind of like understand the path that we have to be on, right? In Patanjali's Yoga Sutra and in Kapila's Sankhya philosophy, right? There are like these clear steps, right? We gain knowledge and then we transcend that knowledge. So we just have to figure out which one's best for us. That's all. Or a mix of them, right? A mix of them. For me, Raja, Bhakti kind of suit me best, right? Maybe a little bit jnana. Do a lot of study. So, all right. We'll figure it out, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking around. I should end it there. Really appreciate, those of you in my sort today. Good work. Hopefully I'll see you on Tuesday, okay? Have a great day. All right. Those of you on YouTube, again, I want to thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this talk. All right. Keep up your practice. Peace.